I turned pro in 2020 at North American.
Okay.
I had previously won that show in 2012, but that didn't give out pro cards at that time for the weight class I was in bodybuilding.
Okay. And what weight class you did?
So I won it in 2012 as lightweight, and I won it in 2020 as a middleweight.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And so you are pro since 2020,
Correct.
exactly? Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Me, I turned pro in Toronto Pro Qualifier in 2022,
Oh,
and
okay.
she turned pro at a national in 2022. We have three pro qualifier in Canada.
All right. So it's what are the national championship, and then what are the other two pro qualifiers?
Is the national is the Vancouver and the Toronto Pro Show.
Okay, I got you. So Toronto Pro is June 4th, correct?
Yes,
At least it was this year. All right.
yes, exactly, exactly. Okay, and recently I follow you and I start to watch all your video on YouTube and I learn a lot about GH, okay, and insulin and growth factor and the pathway. For real, it's very rare. And I I learned it's very rare. I learned something about that, and that's like new for me. Okay, I always thought thought I always think the maximum amount of GH was 10 IU a day. I will, and in the study, you said you said you can go to 30, I think, for growth.
So that's what the studies show that the IGF-1 systemic IGF-1 conversion can go as high as 700 IGF-1 with some people. There's actually quite a big disparity between the first quartile and the second quartile. I mean, the fourth quartile. Like some people were responding with 1500 IGF-1, while some people are only getting 200 IGF-1.
Oh,
But for the most part, that the mid point, the mean was about 748, and that was with 30 IUs per day.
wow. Okay.
And then it was really difficult to piece out that because you had to extrapolate it from the amount they're giving mice, but it corresponded with some other values. Once other studies were published, I could piece it together from the other things as well. And I think that it's important to note that the the big blast right before bed is great for HIV and preventing muscle wasting, based on what Kurt was explaining with its anti-cortisol properties,
Yeah.
but it isn't ideal for localized growth of muscle tissue, which is where we want to actually inject the muscle every 6 hours. And if you have to inject one location with more than approximately 2 units, it's considered controversial. But that's nothing preventing you from injecting four different muscles with 2 units every 6 hours, which would end up being about 24 units a day. And if you can dilate that down and do it in the middle of the night, like Chase does, Chase Irons, he
Yes.
wakes up in the middle of the night to do it, you could get a fourth bolus of eight. So you could probably go up to 32 a day if you wanted to. And you got to remember that the subjects that they're testing, this 30 units, that's based off of at most 100 kilogram male with a 20% body fat. That's not someone like you who's
Yeah.
260, 270 with like a 10% body fat.
Yes. Yes, and because me, I always did maximum GH. My dose was at the peak was at 10 IU max. I always think if I go more than that, my waist will blow out. I will create a more insulin resistance. I was afraid of the side, and I didn't think uh, the side effect that is more value more than the gains.
Well, I was using 6 units of GH, and I had a 450 IGF-1, and then I've increased it to 14 GH, and I still have a 450 IGF-1 systemic, but I'm still injecting more tissue on my body with that. It's got to have some type of localized growth, especially since the places I've been injecting which is mostly delts and triceps, saw people were noticing an increase in their size. My fasting glucose stayed at 82, so I didn't see any type of insulin resistance. Although if I don't do my steps, then I'll have like a 100, 120. So I think that the amount that having the Stan Efferding 10-minute walks post meal has a bigger impact on your insulin resistance than the GH has a negative impact on your insulin resistance.
Yes,
So in
and
other words, you can offset the resistance from GH with a little bit of a walking after every meal with insulin sensitivity increase by more than necessary. Like it's gross overkill to do the 10-minute walk after every meal. You should have perfect blood glucose if you do that.
okay, perfect. And me and one, yes, the GH increased the insulin resistance, but like you say, in the study is on people with 20% of body fat, and these people maybe don't move a lot, don't train, don't do cardio, is not a bodybuilding lifestyle. And it's why maybe the
Right.
insulin resistance why was higher in this type of individual.
I mean, that's the unfortunate thing is everything that's done with insulin is done on pre-existing diabetics. All the studies on protein metabolism and kidney health are done on people with kidney disease. All the studies done on growth hormone are done on children that are supposed to get bigger. You know, all the studies are done on disease populations because they're trying to get FDA approved for treatment so that the health insurance will pay for that medication so they can jack the price of the medication up 100, 200 fold. That in Canada, because you guys have a more reasonable form of medicine where the doctors are incentivized to keep the patient healthy rather than the doctors are incentivized to keep the patient sick, that everything's based off of preventative care and the medication is much cheaper there. Like for instance, here in the States, it's $300 for 300 units of insulin. Whereas I can order my insulin from Canada and have it mailed to me for $100 for 1,000 units. So I think that's nine.
Yes, but
like
the
10 times.
GH the GH air is fucking expensive. It's like $800 for 60 IU.
Well, here it's 20,000.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
yeah, it's
Okay.
absurdly expensive. Everything here is going through the roof faster than we can understand. I mean, like chicken's $4 a pound. And so it's the only things that are more expensive here are things that poor people need to survive.
Okay.
And then all the stuff that's like the high end stuff didn't really go up in price much.
Chicken ears is $12 a pound at least.
Oh wow, chicken's $12 a pound there.
Yeah, no, not at
Whoa.
least $12 a kilo. A kilo, sorry. A kilo.
Okay.
Okay, at least.
And
Okay,
then
if you go at Walmart to buy a kilo, it's $12. I think it's up to 14. No.
It's 14 now. It's not even a kilo. It's they do like 800 grams a pack instead of
Yes.
a kilo.
It's $7
fucked
for
up.
a pound. $7 a pound, man.
That's
2
fucking
years ago, it was
ridiculous.
$10 for more than 1 kilo. Just 2 years ago.
Yes, it's crazy. Air okay, Ozempic now is very, very, very popular. The Ozempic sponsor all the cinema, the hockey player, everything, and Ozempic is like $450, I think, for one pen, something like that.
Yeah, it's about $1,400 a month here for Ozempic, but you can get it from a gray market peptide source for $75.
I know.
And so what happened is that FDA just banned all peptides because they were releasing Ozempic as semaglutide, and people could circumvent using like all the HRT clinics could do compound pharmacy semaglutide. Basically, they pay $75 for it, but they charge the customer $450. But it's preventing people from getting it from their normal doctor for $1,400. So whoever made it, I forget which company made it, they're losing their shirt. So they leveraged the government to ban peptides, and they didn't ban just that peptide; they banned all peptides at HRT clinics. But they didn't ban it from the gray market and black market sites. So that means that all it does is drive people away from getting it from their doctor and teaches them that they have to get it off of online.
Yes,
So they're
exactly.
losing control. They're basically, by trying to be too heavy-handed, they're losing control. It's like you're holding, let's say, um, a cat, and you are holding the cat's fine. You start squeezing the cat, that's one thing. You start squeezing the shit out of the cat, it's going to claw you and jump to the floor. And so that's what they're doing to the American people, is they're choking the shit out of them, trying to strangle the life out of them, and they're just squiggling out of the tight grasp of the government.
Yeah, no, okay. Some bodybuilder and some guy did Olympia in the past. I know they always told me they did like man, crazy amount of GH, like 20, 25 IU. And I saw your video. Never before I saw your video, I always thinking that what is useless because you don't obtain more growth on the Sudai, the IGF-1. You can convert that much GH to IGF-1.
Some people can't. Some people can, some people can't. That's why you got to do the serial blood work to find out. And then you also have to make sure your estradiol is a reasonable amount, because estradiol, if it's too low, won't convert the GH to IGF-1. But if the estradiol gets too high, I saw a cessation of benefits. Now, Kurt's hypothesis is, as estradiol goes up and up and up, IGF-1 binding protein 1 will keep going up and up and up, and will actually have a negative effect. Whereas the estrogen goes higher and higher, it is going to cut down on the IGF-1 produced. But that's not what my blood work showed, as I played around with a lot of different numbers, and 450 is the limit no matter what I do. So I think what it forms is there's an asymptote that it drives up quickly to get towards that 300. Then from 300 to 450, it started slowing down, and then nothing happens. Well, after that point that you can get up to 450, more estradiol or more GH does not benefit it, and more estradiol doesn't harm it.
Okay, but GH convert to other things, other growth factor like MGF and.
So MGF is a form of IGF-1. That's why a lot of the scientists get angry when people say MGF, is because there's IGF-1 A E, and then there's like IGF-1 AC, and the AC has been mislabeled as MGF. And so the people think, and I might be getting those designations wrong, because I like to think in terms of MGF. But when I talk about local IGF-1, I'm pretty much talking about MGF. And when I'm talking about systemic IGF-1, I'm talking about IGF-1AE or whatever. Okay. I don't remember them off the top of the head, because after a while, it just becomes gibberish, and it just sounds like a Star Wars droid, and nobody can remember what the hell it's talking about.
Do you believe is why when you inject local GH, you grow local because you convert to the specific IGF?
That's supposed to be how it works. Yeah, is that if you inject it locally, it's going to, like MGF and potentially is MGF, converts that the actual GH is potentiated by estrogen. Now, whether it's the estrogen beta receptor itself is bound and then distributes IGF-1, or more likely, I think that the scientists that I read that paper from didn't understand, the GH binds to the GH receptor, and then the estrogen binds to the estrogen beta receptor, and then those two receptors connect. They actually meet and touch in the membrane, and that releases the IGF-1. And the IGF-1 it releases is the IGF-1C, which is the MGF. The MGF then migrates as an autocrine. I'm not autocrine, paracrine. It migrates to the satellite cell, okay, and then helps the satellite cell migrate back to the muscle cell. And then it will donate a nucleus through either prostaglandin E2. I forgot which prostaglandin E2 it is, but I think it's prostaglandin E2 and or the estrogen alpha receptor. I think the one of them, yeah, I'm just getting confusing here, but the estrogen, the nucleus donates to the muscle cell, and then with the help of the androgen receptor being bound, that's going to cause the cell to swell. And if the cell swells enough, hypertrophy, if there's enough nuclei present that it can split into multiple cells, you have hyperplasia. And then now that, because if there isn't enough nuclei there, then there isn't enough nuclei to support all the different organelles and the cell functioning itself. Because, all cells have a basic amount of necessary functioning, and then there's the specific role of that cell, which is something different. Kind of like this computer that we're on, we've got a motherboard, we have a CPU, we have a graphics processing unit, we've got a serial bus that communicates the RAM with the hard drive, and there's certain things that have to be in every computer for that computer to work, right? Then there's the software you have in the hard drive, the computer, that's what it actually does and what it's programmed to do. So that a gland, for instance, in your thyroid gland is there to produce thyroid hormone.
Yeah.
Whereas a muscle cell is there to produce contractile elements like actin and myosin, and that just causes the cell to contract. And that's why two computers have the same basic hardware, but can have two completely different functions.
Yeah.
Just like what with the cells. And so the specific hormone receptors on the surface or in the cytosol of the cell is how that cell responds to the endocrine system. And that's what tells that nucleus, although we all have every cell in our body has the exact same DNA, it's what protein is encoded from that DNA through transcription translation is dependent off of how its hormones had directed it to do that. And if it's an endocrine hormone, something that circulates through the whole body, the reason why a muscle cell responds differently from your blood to a thyroid cell responding to your blood is based off the receptors on the surface. The thyroid cell has TSH receptors, thyroid stimulating hormone receptors.
Yes.
The muscle does not. The muscle has androgen and estrogen and insulin and growth hormone receptors, and so it responds to those. And probably there's hundreds of other receptors on every cell that I'm just glossing over because I'm trying to fixate on the specific differences, not the similarities between those two cells.
Yes, and but if you produce like MGF, but when you inject local IGF-1, okay, local GH, sorry. If you produce MGF, okay, but your systemic IGF-1 in your blood will not be higher will not show higher in the blood work. Yeah?
I would think, okay, so the GH will bind to your liver, and then with the help of estrogen will make IGF-1 systemically. It'll travel through your whole body. Yeah. That will hit all the tissue and make all the tissue grow. But MGF-1 is normally released from tension on the muscle. So if you're hitting something like 80% of your 1RM, that will induce the muscle to make its own MGF.
Okay.
And so that's where MGF is different from systemic. Is the MGF in the bicep will only grow the bicep. It's not going to grow anything outside the bicep.
Okay, and it's why that will not show higher IGF-1 in your blood work, right?
I don't think so, no. I think that if you lift your ass off and you grow muscle through MGF mediated, I don't think your systemic IGF-1 in your blood is going to go higher.
Okay, perfect. And okay, so it's crazy because the doctor here, it's very general. Again, always told me when I told him like my cycle, everything, when I do GH, you will have cancer, and I know GH don't treat cancer. GH just increase. Example, if you have a cancer, that will grow faster. Okay, and people always say that GH cause cancer, but in reality, okay, you're more risky to have cancer, to eat food, drink water, right, in the air. And GH, I think for female, okay, in my opinion, and male, GH is safer than anabolic steroid.
I would agree to that. Yeah, for sure. And then, like, all right, it's not the GH that causes accelerated cancer growth. It would be the IGF-1 that causes accelerated cancer growth. And like you mentioned, you have to have cancer to grow a cancer you already have.
Exactly.
And the cancer is induced by oncogenes that are triggered by I forgot the term of pathogens that are for cancers, but there's carcinogens. The carcinogens trigger oncogenes, and the carcinogens are going to be in our air. It's going to be in our food. It's going to be in our water. And if you're somewhere like Africa where it's less industrialized, and of course there's probably some places in Africa where it's very industrialized. This isn't a dig on Africa, but there's certain places in Africa that are very pure and are more like how the world was 100, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 years ago. If you're just in the jungles of Africa, there's probably not very many carcinogens, and you would have much less likely chance of getting cancer. So if you could live in the middle of the desert or in the middle of the Canadian forests where there's no pollution, you're catching your own bird and game and fish, and you're drinking boiled spring water and stuff like that, and you did all the GH in the universe, you're probably not going to get cancer.
Exactly. Yes, and I think for a guy and for I see by myself, okay, with my athlete, and for a girl and a guy, GH is a must, because when you do GH, you react better at your steroid cycle, on tests, on everything. You are better, your density is better, and you retain more glycogen too. Okay,
right. And that the androgen receptor is upregulated by the growth hormone binding to the growth hormone receptor, and then the androgen receptor upregulates growth hormone expression. So the growth hormone makes the test work better, the test makes the growth hormone work better. In one mechanism, that's just direct receptor activity and proliferation. Then the test converts to E2, and the E2 amplifies the conversion of the GH to the IGF-1. Then the IGF-1 triggers the same cascade for muscle protein synthesis as the androgens do, as trainings do, as leucine does. There's the mTOR and AKT, and they communicate with each other. So if you're hammering it from the insulin-like growth factor receptor, the IGF-1 receptor, the insulin receptor, your androgen receptor, and leucine, you've hit that signal, the on switch to grow muscle, 4 different ways.
Yes, you hit mTOR on 4 different ways. Okay, and it's why insulin too upregulate the GH receptor. When you introduce insulin, you upregulate the GH receptor, right?
I forgot the exact mechanism, but I'm familiar with the idea that if you take insulin and GH together pre-workout, you'll get more IGF-1 than if you take GH alone. Now, the exact mechanism of how the insulin causes that increase in IGF-1 production, I don't remember. However, it could very well cause an increase in the GH receptor, but endogenous GH and insulin are at odds with each other. As insulin goes up, GH production goes down. As GH goes up, insulin typically goes down, because one is a storage hormone and one is a life preservation hormone.
But you need
one wants you to use fat for fuel, and one wants you to store carbohydrates.
But you need the two to create IGF-1, the insulin and the GH, to produce IGF-1. If you are deficit caloric, you will not convert that much GH to IGF-1, right?
That may be so. I'm not familiar with that. I thought that it's E2 estrogen that helps convert the GH to IGF-1. I didn't think that insulin was necessary. However, you usually don't, when you're cutting, you can use 1.5 units of GH every several hours and amplify the speed at which you burn fat. So typically people don't change that much from the amount that they use off season and pre-contest. I would say that people use between 2 and 6 units pre-contest, and people use between 6 and 20 units off season.
I see the opposite. Here is the opposite. People use more in pre-contest and people use less in off season, because they always think they get more of their GH in pre-contest. But me, I think the opposite. You are better to put GH off season, because you want to grow off season, and you will not grow that much in prep and convert that much to IGF-1. I always think if you are in a caloric deficit, you don't convert that much GH to IGF-1, and in your pre-contest, your estrogen is very low, and you don't convert that much to IGF-1.
Right. I mean, you're not going to grow much muscle pre-contest. You could double or triple your androgen load and maybe gain 1 pound of muscle, whereas you could play it safe and only lose 1 pound of muscle And for that, but your organs are going to be rip roaring ready to go as soon as you step off stage. You're healthy, and then you can start a blast. Whereas if you blasted all the way into the show, trying to grow into the show, you maybe gained 1 pound of muscle in the whole prep, but now you have to take a recovery phase to clean yourself out before you can start your off season. So when you look at the span of the whole year, you're growing less because you were impatient and you wouldn't allow yourself to use less drugs going into the show.
Yes, exactly. And do you think that the GH contribute to grow the waist? Because
No.
Me too. I mean, I always think if your waist grows, it's because you eat that too much food and you don't control your stomach, and you let your waist go to.
I think it has to do. Pardon?
Like it means that you don't control your waist, like you don't practice vacuums, you don't.
Yes.
You're not conscious, and you just let it out always. It gets stretched by itself, and like you get used to that position after a while.
Yeah, for sure. Like I had a 7 points before the channel originally got banned in 2018. I had the 7 points of the waist that so the systemic IGF-1 has binding affinities that at the top is spleen, then is intestine, then is other organs, and at the bottom of the list is muscle. So that in theory, if you have enough systemic IGF-1 over time, you might get some growth in the organs. However, in reality, if that was true, we wouldn't be seeing that most of the people when they get to the Olympia stage these years have smaller waists than ever before. And that I personally, in 2009, I had a 28-inch waist, and 2019, I had a 25.7-inch waist, and I used growth hormone and insulin the entire time. And I went from squatting 200 pounds to squatting 400 pounds for reps. So if squatting and deadlifting increased waist size, my waist got smaller. Doesn't make any sense. If GH caused an increase in waist size, my waist got smaller. Didn't make any sense. That the biggest difference was I practiced vacuums. So that, and to this day, if I've never been gotten as lean as I was in 2019, but even when I was a few percent higher than that, instead of let's say 5%, I'm 7%, I was still coming in at a 26.5, a 27-inch waist with a vacuum. That I think that vacuums and keeping the transverse abdominis as tight is the most important thing. And I think that the area that we as bodybuilders know the least about is proper ways to train the transverse abdominis. We know vacuums. Some people say planks. Some people say reverse planks. I found that if I don't do reverse planks for a while, then I do reverse planks. Then I try to do my vacuums in the morning. It hurts. So I'm able to make my transverse abdominis sore by doing reverse planks. That tells me that it is a functional exercise. Now, do regular planks, did those help? I don't know. The reverse planks do help. So other than reverse planks and doing vacuums, I don't know how to actually make the waist smaller, but I know for certain that does work to make the waist smaller. I have no certainty that anything makes the waist bigger, except for the obvious inverse, which is not having abdominal control and pushing out on your guts with food volume. So manage gut health, gas, biome stuff that's kind of over my head. And that I'm lucky that I've got my partner, Dr. Karina Dodson. She's really good with gut health and micronutrients and microbiome and stuff. She works with me on all our clients, and she reads the blood work, and she designs their nutrition, specifically micros and supplements and whatnot, to help them with all of the stuff that's under the hood. And then I focus on the training and the periodization of the training, as well as the medicine that would go along with, whether it's gear or whether it's actual health medicine to help them. But most of the time, chronic illnesses like blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes are treated with the diet, not treated with medication.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, I always tell that to my client. Do vacuum at least 4 rounds at the morning on empty stomach, and after your last meal of the day, like that, you are full and you need to practice to keep your waist tight. because I always think if your waist grow is because you don't you let your stomach go out and always go out, and that just continue to stretch and grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The most people underestimate the three things that are the most important thing in bodybuilding: posing, skin, waist size.
Yes.
And
What
the women get that stuff down. Women understand that completely, that posing, skin, and waist size is absolutely critical. The physique guys get that, but for some reason, the bodybuilders, they don't give a fuck about their skin. They just use more D-ball. They don't give a fuck about posing.
Yes.
They're just like, I'll just get bigger. And they don't give a fuck about their waist size. They're like, I'll just make my legs and my shoulders bigger. Then no one will notice how fat I look.
That is so true.
It's so true. I always told to people, if you have a weakness and you pose properly, you will hide your weakness. The posing is one of the most important thing. And your waistline, man, if you look, example, some guy look freaking good in tank top, and when they remove their tank top, their waistline, their waistline brise leur physique.
So big, actually, they don't look good.
Yes, their waistline is so big and not good, and that scrap their look.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the most important thing on the body. It's the focal center of the body. It's the first thing that I would think. Well, I don't want to know if it's the first thing girls look at, but I would say it's the second or third thing that girls look at when you're taking your clothes off is your waist. That I would think that nothing is more important than having the small waist, because every inch you bring down your waist size is one more inch on shoulders, one more inch on arms, one more inch on legs, one more inch on lats. It's incredible the difference. If you have a waist that's 1 inch bigger than your legs, that looks good. If you've got a waist that's 1 inch smaller than your legs, you have the biggest legs on stage.
It's so true, man. Some guys have a so small waist, and their legs are not big, you see, and they look freaking good just because their waist are very, very, very small.
Illusion.
Yep, it's absolutely
a proper illusion.
Yes,
and then same thing with the posing is like, if you throw your hips back and then you project your chest forward, you can make your waist look 2 or 3 inches smaller in photographs than if you actually stand straight up and down.
Yes, it's true. And for the insulin, okay, I know your body produces enough insulin, but off season, when you're built like me, I always use insulin off season. Same in pre-contest, because I have honestly, in pre-contest, I use insulin only pre-workout, because I find when I don't use insulin pre-workout, my pump is not as good. I think because I have a less hydration muscular, my pump is not as good. I have less energy at the gym, and I'm less powerful at the gym. I know some guy said that insulin you need to use just enough season because you eat a lot of food, and just to continue to drive the nutrient, to continue to absorb and take a break on your pancreas, and that is anti-oxidative. But I used to, for myself and my client, I find in pre-contest, pre-workout is a good, I see good result.
So if you can use pre-contest and pre-workout insulin to help you get a better workout, that's great. A lot of people, if they use pre-workout insulin, they get hypo and lightheaded because they're not matching their insulin with their carbs. They're basically trying to chase the insulin with carbs. And I feel that the most important, like the last carbs I'm going to have pre-contest, like the last I'm going to sacrifice would be the intra-workout carbs.
Me too.
Then the second to last I'm going to sacrifice would be probably the post-workout carbs. And the third to last unit I'm going to sacrifice is the pre-workout carbs. I would never go less than 150 carbs. I don't think I'm ever going to have to go less than 150 carbs. But if I was going to do 150 carbs, I'd have 60 pre-workout, 30 intra-workout, and 60 post-workout, which would allow me personally to get away with 4 or 5 units of Humalog and not have any problems. And if somebody's going hypo on 4 or 5 units of Humalog, that means next workout use 3.
Yes,
or next
exactly.
workout use 2. There's no reason. It's not like you have to use, if you use insulin, you have to use 5 or greater, and that there's no shame in using 1 unit or a half a unit. Like, it's useful even with incredibly small doses to use a half a unit insulin or a unit of insulin pre-workout.
Yes, I like insulin pre-workout. Personally, I find the last carb I want to cut in my diet is the intra workout, because the intra workout, I think my workout is shit if I don't have intra carbs. I prefer to cut in first the post workout carbs than the pre workout, because I think when you go at the gym, you want to look good at the gym, to pump good, to have a good pump, have a good workout, and after you don't care about being fat during the day.
So I guess the reason why I like the post-workout carbs is because optimally I would refill those muscles, and the carbohydrate and insulin would then blunt the catabolic effect of the workout and stop the breakdown, and possibly activate the AKT and mTOR so that I can synthesize a little bit of muscle for a short period of time, just for the purpose of preventing it from breaking down. Plus, the more empty you get with glycogen, the more muscle protein you lose. It's not like the glycogen tank has to hit 0 before the first bit of protein is sacrificed. You start losing protein as soon as you hit 30 to 50% glycogen. So even when I'm pre-contest, I want to keep my glycogen at least 70, 80% full, which seems like but that's why I cut for 20 to 24 weeks rather than 12 weeks. It's so hard for me to build muscle. I don't want to sacrifice any muscle on a prep.
Okay. And the off season, what's the scenario you use insulin? Me personally, I use insulin off season around the workout, because it's where I put the most amount of carb on myself, on my athlete, and I don't coach small athlete. I coach normally big athlete, and they use insulin because they need. Most of my athletes eat between 7 to 1,000 grams of carbs a day. But before I take an athlete, I recomp the athlete. I start to make him increase in sensibility to insulin, and after I start to push the food, and they stay lean. I continue to do cardio of season at all my athletes. I prefer the athlete to do a bit more cardio, a bit more like a step in the day, and eat more than the opposite.
All right. Yeah. I found the same thing, that if I don't do cardio, I don't do steps, then my athletic ability and my overall health go down. And your health itself is the function that determines muscle growth. So if you're not a healthy athlete, you won't grow muscle, you'll just get fat. And then there's other more complicated ways of saying that, but by doing the cardio in the morning and by doing your steps post meal, as Rich Piano would put it, it makes your body a machine.
Yes.
And so I mean, there's not really a good way of putting it, except for sometimes you got to use the bro science meathead talk, because it gets to the point and it's in one sentence. But once you make your body a muscle growing machine, then the more carbs you feed it, the more it's going to grow, and it won't store fat, assuming the insulin drives the carbs into the muscle and not the fat cells. So if I can get away with growing on 500 carbs and I don't really have to use much insulin, then that's fine. But if I needed to go up to 700 carbs or 800 carbs, I would have to start ratcheting up the insulin to meet that. Personally, I'd rather use Lantus for that purpose than try to use Humalog throughout the day, and just use my Humalog pre-workout to get the best pump possible.
Okay, yes. But me, I use just around the workout, pre and post normally, the Humalog, because the post-workout windows and the pre-workout, because I always have a crazy gym if I have a insulin pre-workout. When I remove it, I always feel my gym is less effective. But maybe I tested a lot of time. I try to put it, remove it, put it, and I always feel not the same without the insulin pre-workout.
Mm-hmm. I found that the sweet spot for me is between 3 to 5 units of Humalog pre-training, and 3 units, 30 intracarbs, excuse me, or 5 units with about 60 intracarbs. And then, as far as the post-training goes, a lot of people don't realize that the Humalog is in your system for 6 hours. So, I mean, even if I've got a 3-hour workout, I've still got 3 hours post workout where the Humalog is working. And that typically, yes, the tail is very shallow, but if I'm running that on top of Lantus, then I'm adding my Lantus amount to the tail, and it's actually significantly higher than people realize it is. So I mean, if I was to come home and spike it with another Humalog shot again, I'm stacking the second Humalog on top of the first Humalog on top of the Lantus. And then if I usually have 2 or 3 meals post workout, and those meals typically are 100 or more carbs each, the carbs themselves are going to induce quite a bit of insulin.
Yes. And
so it's at that point, it's kind of overkill.
Okay, perfect. And me, I never use Lantus off season. I don't know. I use Triziba in my last. I did a prep, but I stopped the prep because I started to work too much, and I needed to start, but I needed to stop the prep, and I used Triziba in pre-contest, and for real that changed my look a lot. I was fuller, same with less carbs. I don't have hypoglycemia like some people maybe have. And I when I added T3, I don't feel flat at all. I just keep getting full and leaner every week. I don't know if you use in pre-contest or
what are you talking about? What's the name of the drug?
Triziba is like is insulin deglutec.
I'm not familiar with it. Do you know if it's Glargan or Lispro or Altalente?
No, is a
regular.
Is a no peak because Lantus have a peak. Triziba have no peak and is 42 hour.
Oh, it's even longer acting than Lantus.
Yes.
Okay, I understand. All right.
Yes, I use that.
And how many units of that did you use?
25.
How many? 25 units. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I use 15 Lantus, and I'm underdosing the insulin, but I've got an 82 fasted glucose. So with 14 units of GH. So I feel like if I was to use too much insulin, that would drive me into the hole. I have to make sure to get, once I get my carbs to about 600, I probably would ratchet up a little bit on the insulin.
Okay, because I was in pre-contest, and because the Triziba don't have peak, and I took my blood sugar, and my blood sugar don't move very, very much. I am always between 4.8 mol by liter to 5.2.
Okay.
In the morning.
I don't know how that converts over, because I know that you guys use a different system.
I think it's between 70 and 85, something like that.
Okay. All right, then that sounds great. Yeah. So, I mean, again, if you were to use more insulin without increasing your carbs, you'd be waking up hypoglycemic, right? And you'd be going into gluconeogenesis and be burning muscle just to get your glucose up high enough. So you're running that razor's edge, and you've got it down to a perfect system. How many carbs are you eating, out of curiosity?
In this prep, I was at 500 a day.
Okay.
And I become very, very fast, and I increment a very, very big idea, like 7,000 calorie, like 900 gram of carb easily in my ID, twice a week.
Okay, cool. So you had a 7,000 calorie day twice a week. That was 900 carbs. Okay.
Yeah.
So 3,600 of calories from carbs, and the other 3,600 calories from protein and fat.
Yes, protein and fat.
Okay.
And
Oh,
that
that's a lot of food. That's a lot of
yeah,
food.
and of season I ate so much like 1,200 carbs every fucking day, like every day. Plus like I eat maybe some burger every second day because to keep
So,
my weight
mhm.
in the off season. I was at 285 at my peak of my shape. I was 285 at 5 feet
You
4.
reached 290?
Huh?
Did you
No,
reach 290?
no, 285 empty stomach.
And you're 5'9", you said?
5'4".
4.5.
You're 5'4"?
Yeah.
You're the same height as me. That's funny. Okay, cool. All right. I could now I have to follow in your footsteps. I need to get up. I need to get up over 230. Let's baby steps. Let's get me up to 230.
Yeah. But for real, it's very easy to me to put mass between show. I remember I did a show during COVID, the Toronto Pro Qualifier, the Toronto Pro Show, they pushed in December 2021. I was and the next in 2022 was in June. The same show was in June, and I finished second in December, and in June I placed first and win the overall. And in 6 months I gained like 10 pounds of weight stage weight
That's a lot. 10 pounds in a year is crazy.
in six
So
months.
that's nuts. That's nuts. Well, I'm coming up on, let's see, we're almost November 1st. I got November, December, January. I got 3 more months I can grow before I have to turn around and start coming down for next season. So I'm going to try to really push up on the carbs, and I'll probably be a bit more aggressive with the insulin and see if I can put on some mass.
For real, I'm very aggressive with for real. You know a bit about Chad? Chad pushed the food, Nichols.
Nichols?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of my friend was coached by him, and I saw their diet, man. That was crazy, crazy diet. I can't eat like that. Okay, and he pushed the food very high, and my friend took like 20 pounds a year, man. Pushed the food crazy high, and I'm a big believer that off season you need to eat.
Well, I did about 3, 4 months, and then I got gyno surgery, so I have to be able to lift for a couple
Yeah.
weeks, but I kept my gear in place. I brought down the GH a little bit from 14 units to 8 because I'm just wasting it at this point. But the food I brought down from 550 to about 400, 450 for carbs. And then the last week, I basically went down to 4 meals because I was just too much different things going on. I couldn't get all 5 meals in. But I think that it really isn't much of it's not like I'm starting from scratch in an off season. I basically just went up and then I'm holding. I actually kind of incidentally mini cut because I
Yes.
miscalculated. I lost quite a bit of fat the last couple of weeks, and then I'll be able to really ramp it up into this next 3 months. And hopefully I'll be able to put on a solid 12 pounds in the next 3 months. And hopefully at least 6 of it will be muscle.
It's possible. What I learned with the time is same when you are off, you take vacation, or same if you are like not at 100%, you always progress, you always train, you always be here, and you do the job. And after you get better, that don't show because on the scale maybe that don't show, but you always get better.
I see. Yeah, I've been always trying to go a good solid 90 to 95%. I feel that people that go 100% burn out. Like you save the 100% effort for contest prep, and then in the off season give it like 90, 95% effort, because if you're stressed out and you're redlining it the whole year with emotional stress, then as soon as something goes wrong in your life, you're going to fall apart.
Yes.
You need to have a little bit of a buffer to deal with when life kicks you, that you don't fall down because you've got your balance spread out. You've got some diversification.
Exactly. And okay, personally, I think the insulin and growth hormone, okay, for women, is not enough use, maybe enough use because some women, okay, a lot of women don't use insulin or GH and use shit ton of anabolic, and I think it's safer to use maybe GH and insulin than shit ton of steroid for the virilization, the side effect, for the health, because anabolic steroid can cause a liver problem, kidney problem, and insulin. I never see a liver or kidney problem on insulin.
With women, I pretty much, my approach is like a half a milligram of testosterone every day, and then 1 milligram of Anavar sublingually pre-training. And then I know that the most I would ever agree to is someone using 10 milligrams of Primo a day, and then only for short runs. So, I mean, I really, really drastically underdose women, people would say. However, I do use GH, maybe 1 unit of GH with that protocol. And it ends up being pretty effective. Like, I've never seen anyone not get exactly what they wanted faster than they could ever dream. If the diet's on point, the training is brutal, and they're doing a half a milligram of test, 1 milligram of Anavar, and 1 unit of GH. And then I've even had people, because I expect girls to double up, right? I know whatever you tell them, you expect them to take twice as much. So if they're really taking 1 milligram of test, 2 milligrams of Anavar, and 2 units of GH, they make such incredible gains. People start making fun of them for being on steroids and looking like a man, and then they feel bad, so they want to pull back on it. Whereas I've seen with girls who are taking 20 milligrams or 50 milligrams of Anavar, it so much changes so fast when they're pre-contest, then when they start eating food again and they fill out, they see how much muscle they actually grew that they didn't even know they grew, and then they blow up and they don't look the same and they can't do bikini. They have to do figure. One season like that.
Yeah. Okay. And yes, do you think here in Canada, okay, insulin is very, very like comment je pourrais dire mal vu, mal vu.
People makes it look like a bad guy. Like
Yes, like
insulin is bad. Like, it's so overrated. No pro uses it. Like you see this often on social media here in Canada.
yes, and because yes, in Quebec, man, some guys say, "Oh, it's unhealthy to do insulin." I'm like, me, I think it's a safe drug if you know how to use it, and I think it's more safer than use insulin.
Right. And, it's just nobody's going to drop down from shooting Tren when they shoot it. And with insulin, they can do their math wrong, fall asleep behind the wheel, and die in a car accident.
Yeah.
And whereas people say, well, I mean, how many people do you know that did that? It's like, I've done that. I've fallen asleep behind the wheel and gotten into head on collision before. And I know someone else who fell asleep on insulin and cracked their head open and died. And I know another guy that died in the parking lot because he used insulin and he didn't make it to his car in time to eat his post-workout meal. And I don't know anybody that's died from steroids, but I know people that have died from insulin. So that's why, to me, insulin is very much in use. It's just way more advanced than anyone really needs to worry about unless they're going for a pro card or they're already a pro.
Okay, perfect. Because I always think example, if you fall in EPO, because I saw so many things. Some people think insulin is like GH and inject 100 IU of insulin of Humalog pre-workout because they think that was like GH. You need to calculate 10 IU equal 1 unit of GH, and they shut up.
Oh, I
like,
see.
Yeah, I saw a guy, man. One of my friends told me, man, I did 100 IU every workout. And one day my coach told me, what the fuck, you're here? And I'm like, oh, it's possible to do that crazy. I always think my theory was the body can convert, example, if you misleading a bit on the IU, the number of gram of carb by IU, your body can convert convert other things like fat and to upregulate your blood sugar.
So in theory, glucagon could convert liver glycogen into blood sugar. It can convert muscle tissue into blood sugar. But because insulin is the counter signal, because the signal's so strong to store, it overrides the signal of the glucagon to liberate. So if someone's drastically overdosed, if they minorly overdose, they go into hypoglycemia, the glucagon gets released and the glucagon saves them. But if they've drastically overdosed, then the glucagon's not going to be produced fast enough to save them.
Okay, perfect. Yes, yes. It's why I think like if you dose like 1 or 2 IU of more, it's not that dangerous
No,
for
it's no big deal. But I've done that before though, where I've taken 1 unit. I try to take 1 unit of Humalog before fasted cardio to make the L-carnitine hit harder, and I'll take 4 units, and I'll get so hypo. I can barely get off the treadmill. I'm like shaking with cold sweats. I'm not even safe to drive. And it's like, it's not worth it, because let's say it benefits you 1%, but you fuck up and overdose one out
yes,
of 10 times and have to abort the cardio. That means you're increasing it by 1%. But if you distribute that fuck up over all of them on average, you're decreasing it by 10%. So you're
yes,
gaining 1%, but losing 10% over the span of a month, or over the span of 3 months. You're burning less fat because you have to abort cardio so many times. It's
yes,
just like training to failure or training super heavy. Like on paper, you get more of a muscle stimulus by training to failure or training super heavy. But when you calculate in how many times you get injured by training super heavy and
exactly.
how much time you have to take off over the span of the year, you actually grow less muscle.
I
Just like training to failure, that one extra rep makes you feel more macho, but you have to deload every 3 weeks rather than every 5 weeks. So you're only training 75% of the time rather than 80% of the time, which means the benefit you're getting from that extra rep, although it's a very valuable rep, is less than the amount of extra weeks off you have to take to fight against systemic fatigue.
yes, it's why me I'm a high volume guy. I always do high volume because first for the insulin sensibility, you increase the sensibility. Second, because your risk of injury is lower. You don't want to, if you tear a bicep, your career is maybe over in bodybuilding. If you tear a pec, too, man, you need to be conscious of the risk versus benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And nobody really looks at that. They're too
Yes,
busy trying to compensate for insecurities, and they're not approaching it like it's a job.
yes, exactly. And what do you think about the IGF-1 LR3?
So my video from 2014 is still the most comprehensive thing I've seen on it, and it has the most views I've seen on it. But it's the bottom line is, you're basically flooding your system with IGF-1 LR3 systemically, and it's going to stay around in your body for a very long time because of that LR3, long arginine at position 3 or whatever, long chain arginine position 3. And that's going to stimulate growth per se. But in absence of growth hormone, there won't be any binding protein 3, and binding protein 3 is specifically anabolic itself. So if you were going to use LR3, you'd have to pair it with the GH, not because the GH is going to stimulate IGF-1. It won't, because the system's flooded with IGF-1 already, but because the GH will cause the binding protein 3 to get released. And that will help as a chaperone carrier molecule. And it itself is anabolic. So I don't think it's really necessary in the end. I think because you don't know how high quality the LR3 is, and I've never seen really great results with it. Although maybe Increlex, which is more like DES, is just IGF-1 post workout, gives a great response. But you don't use that pre-workout because the pump's so big you can't actually grab the dumbbells. And I've ran into that myself with DES. Is I can't pick up the dumbbell because the pump is so big with IGF-1 DOS. So there might be a place for all that, but I think that just using growth hormone alone gets you those type of benefits and all the other benefits of growth hormone. So if somebody has money to burn and all the hookups in the world, I would say get to your maximum dose of GH, then add an Increlex post-workout.
Yes, but Increlex, okay, here in Canada is don't exist. And Increlex, I saw two guys did that in my life, and they told me because it's I never see maybe a better pump with IGF-1 LR3. I never see a good result. Okay, and this guy told me, man, the Increlex that improve everything, that improve their muscle density, the muscle mass, they gain a lot of weight. They grow faster, they eat more carb, and they stay leaner. I don't think if you have any experience with Increlex.
I've never used it. No, I can't find it. I would totally buy it if I could.
I think every bodybuilder will totally buy it if he could. He could.
It's not even more expensive per unit. It's just more expensive up front. It's $1,000 for a bottle, but you get a lot. Like you get 40 workouts for that $1,000.
It's what the dosage is. What 1 milligram a day?
I think it's something I'd have to ask Roman what his protocol was, because Roman told me a very specific protocol with Increlex, and and Roman's never wrong. Like Roman is always on point. So I totally would go with that.
Yeah, because I saw a guy did the 2 milligram pre and 2 milligram post of Increlex.
That sounds like a lot. That's 1,000 micrograms.
That's 4,000 micrograms. Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yes, on the yes, that's a lot. And he told me, man,
I think that's off by a factor of 10. I think it's probably like he did 100 micrograms bilaterally pre and 100 micrograms bilaterally post, because that would be, and then I think the whole container is 10 milligrams, but I could be wrong.
He's 40. He's 10 milligram by millimeter. I read.
Okay. Well, yeah, whatever it ends up being, it's 40 doses, assuming you're going bilateral. So it should be 1/80th of the container per time you use it.
Wow. Yes. Okay. Yes, that's enough for today. Thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friend, and like the video. And don't forget, it's not medical advice, it's just for entertaining.